Good evening, Year 11. Welcome to your night before news for Maths Paper 3. This is the higher version. So, what's going to be in this exam? We've now had Paper 1 and Paper 2, so we can really start to narrow down some of these topics we know aren't going to come up again, and some of really high frequency topics which are yet to come up. As a quick reminder, here's everything that came up in Paper 1, and you saw this list in last week's night before news, and these are all the things that were in Paper 1. I've also added here everything that came up in Paper 2. So these are all the topics that came up in Paper 2. And I've gone through from these two lists and started crossing out some topics and removing some topics from our suggested revision that haven't come up. There's also some really high frequency topics that are yet to come up in this exam, and I'll talk about those as I go through the following slides. If you want to pause at this point and make a note of some of these, make a note of some of these things you don't need to revise, I'd suggest doing that. If you're doing paper tonight and any of these things come up, I wouldn't bother trying them. So, we can't say for certain that anything that has come up won't come up again, but we do know that what has come up is less likely to come up again, and we do know that if it hasn't come up yet, it's going to come up in Paper 3. But really, really quickly, make sure, and I said this before Paper 2, you don't just look at Paper 2s, sorry, you don't just look at Paper 3s tonight, you look at both Paper 2s and Paper 3s. Because a topic that hasn't come up, for example, compound interest, could come up in a previous Paper 2 or a previous Paper 3. If you only look at Paper 3s, you might miss some key topics. So if you're going to look at papers tonight, which is a really good strategy, pick up a mix of Paper 2s and Paper 3s and look for the key topics from the next few slides which you need to revise. So, what is going to be in this exam? Here is a list of topics for the algebra strand of maths that are yet to come up. Some of these things, there's quite a lot on here actually. We have seen a linear simultaneous equation, we haven't seen a quadratic simultaneous equation. There was a worded iteration question in Paper 2. There wasn't necessarily a normal iteration question we might expect to see, so we could see one of those. And lots of other things here that we haven't seen. On this list, algebraic fractions are probably the most common piece of algebra that we're yet to see, so expect some sort of algebraic fractions maybe in Paper 3, but lots there for you to be thinking about tonight. In terms of geometry, the list starts to get a bit smaller as we go through this. We saw some density in Paper 2, but we haven't yet had speed or pressure, so we might see one of those. There was sine rule and cosine rule in Paper 2, so you might see area of a triangle for further trigonometry in Paper 3. But again, lots of other things here that could come up. Again, the big ones I would point to would be arcs and sectors and volume and surface area. They're two really high frequency topics, and we've not seen either of those yet. Sometimes they put arcs or sectors on top of a volume question, so see if you can find one of those previously. But from this page, the big ones here, arcs and sectors, volume and surface area. In terms of statistics, there was some more statistics in Paper 2. The two big ones on here that we are yet to see is a cumulative frequency graph. Most of the time you'll see a cumulative frequency graph in a set of papers. We've not had one of those yet. Frequency polygon, also another high frequency topic. Don't get confused between those two things. Other thing we yet to see from here that's probably really high frequency is Venn diagrams. Again, it could be any of these things that come up. I'm just saying which are most frequent. Make sure you use this time tonight to revise what you think is best. In terms of number, you can see these lists getting shorter. Big one on here is bounds. No bounds questions yet in Paper 1 or 2. I would be amazed if there's not a bounds question on Paper 3. The other big one here, compound interest. Compound interest and bounds come up pretty much every single year. Compound interest comes up 100% of the time. So those two things from number, if you know you're not 100% sure about compound interest, you know you're not 100% sure about bounds, they are the two big ones on this section. And then finally, ratio and proportion. There was a ratio question in Paper 1. There were two questions involving ratio. Actually, there were three questions involving ratio in Paper 2. So we have had some ratio questions. Doesn't mean we won't see any more. It is something they like to put in lots of times and could be inside another question. But this one, that smallest section for you to think about. What are you going to do this evening? Third time you're hearing me talk about this for this exam. You've heard about it for all of your other exams so far this year. So a really quick reminder, if you want to look at specific topics, first place to go is Sparks Maths. Go to your independent learning section and search your topic. Could be one of those heavy hitting topics we haven't seen yet. Bounds, compound interest, could be cumulative frequency graphs, could be one of these big topics we haven't seen that you want to revise on Sparks. Make sure it's GCSE. Other place to go is exam queue, and again here you can filter, and when you do filter, do paper 2 and paper 3. So at this point don't just put in paper 3 because it could have been in a paper 2 previously, and then search for that topic. Again, really focus on those topics you know you're not confident with, something that hasn't come up. Could be algebraic fractions here, for example. You can then see the mark scheme, you can see what you need to do to get the marks for this question. Could be, you know that algebraic fractions could be a 5-mark question. You know you maybe not might get all 5 of those marks, but if you look at the mark scheme, you see actually a lot of the time for an algebraic fractions question, if it's multiplying, I just have to factorise 3 things correctly, so you know what you need to do to get that first mark. Maths Genie has lots and lots of GCSE revision style papers. Again, here there are solutions for you to check as you go through those. These would be really good if you want repeated practice on the same skill, looking at previous exam questions as well. And then Corbett Maths has huge amounts of videos and worksheets. Again, if you want a specific topic, go to here, go to the practice questions and have a go at those. Would probably be the last place I would go. I'd probably go to Exam Q or Sparks first, but Corbett Maths does have a high number of questions. And then first class maths, again, similarly to Maths Genie and Corbett Maths, you're looking for specific topics to revise here, big packs of questions on the same topic again and again and again. If you want to do practice papers, really, really good thing. Make sure, as I said before, you're looking at papers 2 and 3. You're not just looking at paper 3 because paper 3 is tomorrow. Calculated topics could come up in either of those 2 papers. Maths Genie has a really good supply of papers. You can see all the past papers there with solutions, which is really, really useful when you're doing those. And then the big one, tomorrow morning, the final morning of your maths exams in school is huge. I've talked about in every single one of these I've done, you can pick up 2, 3, 5 marks, if not a few more on the morning of the exam by coming to school with something you don't know how to do and asking for help. And it's great to see lots of you listening to this and doing that, coming in with questions. How do I do this one? Oh, I got stuck on this one last night. How do I do this? To really try and pick up those marks. It could be the difference between a 5 and a 6, a 6 and a 7, a 7 and an 8, and so on. As always, the hub is open from 7 AM. Great to have such a good buzz in there. We had it again with paper 2, the same thing we had with paper 1, having to get more chairs to put into the hub because there's not enough space for all of you coming in is fantastic. I just said it, those questions you haven't been able to answer are the key thing you need to bring with you when you're coming in the morning. Pick up a paper, flick through it and pick something you don't know how to do. It feels great to do a question you know you're going to get right. That's not going to help you in the exam. Flick through a past paper, find something you don't know how to do. And then, like we've had previously, I will then go into the gym for revision on these breakfast mats. The most powerful thing you can do on these breakfast mats is to look through and choose a topic you don't know. For example, if you know circle theorems is something you're not very strong on, you can see here there is a circle theorem question, so go to that one and ask a teacher for help. If you know that there's something else you really, really struggle with, please make sure you're choosing that question, you're picking that piece of paper up and you're going and finding a teacher. I'm really struggling on this topic, how do I do this topic? To make sure it is as impactful as possible. Final time I'm going to say this, good luck in this final maths exam. I'm sure you're going to smash it. Really think about those topics you know are going to come up. What do you need to do to make sure you can maximise your marks on this paper and your overall grade? Good luck, Year 11.